The greatest story ever told. From the beginning until now. 2. The Patriarchal Age and the Covenant of the Seed, circa 2100 BC, circa 1876 BC. Chapter 3. The Abrahamic Covenant, a call to faith and the beginning of the seed. Background: after the Tower of Babel, humanity scattered across the Mesopotamia region, with most falling into polytheism, idolatry. This story marks a dramatic turning point where God chooses just one man from a land rampant with idolatry to execute his plan to save all nations. In the ancient Near East at that time, it was a common culture for gods to make covenants with humans. 1. The call in Ur, Genesis chapter 12 verse 1-3. The story begins in Ur of the Chaldeans, a center of ancient Mesopotamian civilization and a city where idolatry flourished. Here lived Abram, son of Terah. Like anyone else, he likely lived immersed in the culture of worshipping Canaanite gods. One day, an absolute command struck Abram's life like lightning. God, go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you. In the clan-based society of that era, leaving one's hometown meant death. Thus, this command required Abram to abandon his entire foundation of life and security. God, declaring the covenant, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. This promise was not merely a personal blessing. Through Abram's descendants, God was restarting his plan for the salvation of all people, which had been lost in the Garden of Eden. Without asking for a reason, Abram obeyed in faith and set out on his journey, taking his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot. 2. The journey of faith, Genesis 12-19. Abram arrived in the unfamiliar land of Canaan. This was a place inhabited by idols and powerful indigenous people. Having no land to settle on, he lived in tents like a nomad. When famine struck, he left the promised land and went down to Egypt. He also parted ways with his nephew Lot due to a dispute over property. At times, he doubted God and made human errors. Most notably, out of the despair of having no children, he made the mistake of having a son, Ishmael, through his wife Sarai's servant, Hagar. However, despite Abram's imperfections, God did not abandon the covenant. God showed him the countless stars in the night sky, reassuring him, "So shall your offspring be." Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Genesis chapter 15 verse 6. 3. Transformation to Abraham and the covenant of circumcision, Genesis chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, God officially renewed the covenant. Name change: God changed Abram, exalted father, to Abraham, father of many nations, and Sarai to Sarah, mother of nations. Circumcision: God commanded circumcision as a permanent sign of the covenant. This was an act of leaving an eternal mark on their flesh, signifying that they belonged to God. The son of promise: God confirmed that the son of promise, Isaac, would be born through the elderly Sarah. 4. The ultimate test, Genesis 22. After a long wait, the promised son, Isaac, was born. To Abraham, Isaac was the very future of the covenant itself. One day, God put Abraham to the ultimate test. God, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. This command seemed to shatter all of Abraham's faith and hope. Without a word, Abraham went up Mount Moriah with Isaac. He bound his son and took the knife, but at that exact moment, the voice of God was heard. Angel, Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Right there, Abraham found a ram and offered it as a sacrifice instead of Isaac. This act proved that Abraham's faith did not value all his possessions above God's promise, covenant. By passing this test, Abraham became the father of faith. Through his obedience, God confirmed the blessing once again, and the covenant of the seed that began with him was now passed down to his son Isaac. Isaac later married Rebekah, laying the foundation for the next generation. Chapter 4. Isaac and Jacob, the birth of the name Israel. Background: the covenant, promise, confirmed to Abraham was now in the process of being passed on to his son Isaac, and then to his sons Jacob and Esau. This story demonstrates that the covenant is carried on not through the perfection of an individual, but through God's sovereign choice and providence. 1. Isaac's peaceful succession, Genesis 25. Unlike his father Abraham, Isaac lived a relatively peaceful and quiet life. He was the son of promise and directly inherited his father's faith and legacy. Isaac married Rebekah, but they were childless for a long time. When Isaac prayed earnestly, Rebekah became pregnant with twins. The two sons, who struggled even in the womb, were named Esau and Jacob. God, to Rebekah, 2 nations are in your womb. The older will serve the younger. This prophecy was a predetermined declaration that God would continue the lineage of the covenant through a sovereign choice, transcending human custom, primogeniture, birthright. Esau was a fierce man, red and hairy, who loved hunting, while Jacob was of a thoughtful nature, quietly staying among the tents. In the culture of that time, Esau, as the firstborn, naturally had the right to inherit the covenant's blessing. 2. Human greed for the blessing. Genesis chapter 25, 27. Just as he came out grasping his brother Esau's heel at birth, Jacob harbored an intense desire for the covenant's blessing. One day, Esau returned exhausted from hunting and easily sold his birthright, which was as precious as life itself, for a bowl of red stew cooked by Jacob. This incident shows how lightly Esau valued spiritual blessings. Years later, when Isaac grew blind and was nearing death, Jacob conspired with his mother Rebekah. He wore Esau's clothes and covered his hands and neck with goatskins, deceiving his father and stealing the covenant blessing meant for the firstborn. Esau, returning, realizing everything, and enraged, isn't he rightly named Jacob? He grasps the heel, he deceives. This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. Although Jacob seized the covenant blessing through human cunning and deceit, he paid a harsh price. He incurred Esau's wrath and had to flee his beloved home and family to Haran, Paddan Aram. 3. The dream at Bethel and the reaffirmation of the covenant, Genesis chapter 28. Leaving his hometown and walking alone in the wilderness, Jacob fell asleep at night with a stone for a pillow. At that very moment, God, who saw through his despair and anxiety, appeared to him. In a dream, Jacob saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven. Angels were ascending and descending on it, and God stood at the top. God, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Waking from his sleep, Jacob poured oil on the stone pillar and named the place Bethel, house of God. When Jacob the deceiver was a fugitive with nothing, God came to him and reaffirmed the covenant he had given to Abraham. The succession of the covenant was not due to Jacob's perfection, but solely because of God's faithfulness. 4. Wrestling at the Jabbok River and the birth of Israel, Genesis chapter 32. After suffering severe trials in Haran for 20 years, being deceived by and serving his uncle Laban, Jacob now returned home as the patriarch of a large family with 2 wives, 12 children, and immense wealth. However, waiting for him was his brother Esau, who surely had not forgotten his anger from 20 years ago. In extreme fear, Jacob sent his family ahead and remained alone by the Jabbok River. All night long, he wrestled with an angel of God, a man. Angel, let me go, for it is daybreak. Jacob, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Even while suffering the pain of a dislocated hip, Jacob clung on, desperately pleading for a blessing. Jacob's persistent clinging showed that he had changed. He was no longer a man of cunning schemes, but someone who sought a blessing through a direct encounter with God. Angel, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel. He struggles with God, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Receiving the new name Israel, Jacob became the ancestor of the chosen nation promised to Abraham. Israel became the identity of the covenant people, bearing both blessings and hardships. Jacob reconciled with his brother Esau, settled down, and had 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel, but as famine struck, the story shifts to the next location, Egypt. Chapter 5. The story of Joseph, providence amidst trials and the migration to Egypt. Background: the family of Jacob, Israel, and his 12 sons settled in Canaan, but a severe famine struck. This story reveals God's wondrous providence in preserving the entire covenant people through the suffering of one man, detailing the process of the Israelites leaving the promised land to migrate to the powerful nation of Egypt. 1. Jealousy and betrayal, Genesis chapter 37. Among Jacob's 12 sons, his most beloved wife was Rachel, and the son he had with her, Joseph, received special favor. Jacob made a richly ornamented, multicolored robe exclusively for Joseph. This favoritism fueled the jealousy and envy of his brothers. Furthermore, Joseph had prophetic dreams in which his brothers bowed down to him, and he boasted about them. His brothers' hatred reached its peak. One day, the brothers encountered Joseph while they were out grazing their flocks. They plotted to kill him, but ultimately sold him for 20 shekels of silver to passing Ishmaelite, Midianite, merchants. The brothers dipped Joseph's ornate robe in goat's blood and brought it to their father Jacob, who wept bitterly, believing his son had been devoured by a wild beast. This cruel betrayal within the family destined to carry on the covenant lineage demonstrated how human sin destroys even the most fundamental community, the family. Joseph now faced the tragic fate of being dragged off as a slave to the mighty nation of Egypt. 2. Faithfulness in suffering, Genesis 39-40. Arriving in Egypt, Joseph was sold as a slave into the house of Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. However, Joseph did not despair over his circumstances. He faithfully served God wherever he was and gained recognition for his abilities. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered. Joseph soon became the overseer of Potiphar's house, managing all his property. But when he faced unjust sexual temptation from Potiphar's wife, he firmly refused, saying, "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Because of this refusal, Joseph was falsely accused and thrown into prison. Even in prison, he demonstrated his God-given ability to interpret dreams, earning the trust of the prison warden. He spent 2 years languishing forgotten in prison. 3. Pharaoh's dream and a sudden rise to power, Genesis chapter 41. One day, Pharaoh, the absolute ruler of Egypt, had bizarre dreams that no one could interpret, throwing him into severe anxiety. It was a prophetic dream that 7 years of great abundance would be followed by 7 years of severe famine. Only then did a court official who had been helped by Joseph in prison remember him. Joseph was hastily brought before Pharaoh. Instead of claiming his own ability, he humbly interpreted the dream, confessing, "God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Pharaoh was overwhelmed by Joseph's wisdom and spiritual insight. "Pharaoh, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Overnight, Joseph went from a prison cell to becoming the Prime Minister of Egypt. He was 30 years old. He implemented a massive grain storage plan across the entire nation in preparation for the coming famine. 4. Reunion and the realization of providence, Genesis 42-50. As Joseph had prophesied, famine struck the whole world. Jacob's family, living in the land of Canaan, also came down to Egypt to buy grain to escape starvation. The brothers did not recognize Joseph, who had become the prime minister, and bowed down before him. It was the moment Joseph's childhood dreams became reality after more than 20 years. After testing them in various ways to confirm their transformation, Joseph finally revealed his identity. The brothers trembled in fear, but Joseph wept and confessed, "Joseph, and now, do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis chapter 50 verse 20. Through this confession, Joseph realized that while his suffering was the result of his brothers' sins, underlying it all was God's great providence to preserve the covenant people, Israel. Eventually, Jacob's entire family of 70 moved to the land of Goshen in Egypt and lived in peace. Joseph blessed his father Jacob, forgave his brothers, and met his end. The covenant of the seed was now prepared to grow into a nation within the powerful empire of Egypt. Next up is 3. The Exodus and the Covenant of the Law, circa 1446 BC or circa 1290 BC. If you are curious about the next story, please subscribe to this channel now.